You're watching UATV News. My name is Inna Kosinska. Good evening. President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelenskyy, got acquainted with the progress of the implementation of the big construction program in the Cherkasy region. In the city of Kyiv, the head of state and the First Lady honored the memory of Ukrainian poet Taras Shevchenko. They also visited the modern Shevchenko Hub Center. In addition, Volodymyr Zelenskyy announced the construction of large sports complexes in the region, in particular several swimming pools and an ice arena. Besides, he also commented on the construction of roads in the region.
The number of the roads repaired is striking, 250 kilometers last year, and the same plans for this year's big construction. For 2 years, 500 kilometers of roads for Cherkasy region is a big result, 10, 20, 30 times more than in any year of independence in the Cherkasy region. Therefore, I think a couple more years and we will complete the restoration of all the main roads in this region.
President Volodymyr Zelenskyy is going to speak about the occupation of Ukrainian territories during bilateral meetings on the sidelines of the 26th UN Conference on Climate Change in Glasgow at the end of October. This was stated by Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba.
Settlement of the conflict in Donbass, the occupation of Crimea, protection of the rights of political prisoners, and the energy security of Ukraine. These are the key issues that will be discussed in the event of bilateral meetings.
At the same time, Dmytro Kuleba reacted to the recent words of the head of the Russian Foreign Ministry, Sergei Lavrov. He called the initiative of Ukraine to resolve the situation in certain areas of Donetsk and Horlivka regions and the willingness to hold a meeting of foreign ministers of the member countries of the Normandy format fantasies. Dmytro Kuleba recalled that Russian President Vladimir Putin has already promised to organize a meeting for French President Emmanuel Macron and German Chancellor Angela Merkel. Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe condemned blocking by the illegal armed groups of the mission in Donetsk and Horlivka uncontrolled by Ukraine. Daniela de Rieder, special representative of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly for Eastern Europe, said that restrictions of the freedom of movement of observers in Ukraine are an alarming trend that needs to be stopped. Mandated since 2014 to observe and report impartially on the situation in Ukraine, it has been an invaluable tool in documenting ceasefire violations, providing essential data to policymakers and facilitating dialogue among belligerents. I remind all parties to the conflict that the SMM is authorized by consensus decisions of all 57 OSCE participating states and that its freedom of movement must be unconditionally respected. Daniela de Rieder, OSCE Parliamentary Assembly Special Representative on Eastern Europe, published at the official website of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly. The European Union will additionally allocate €3.5 million to help Ukrainians who have suffered from Russian aggression. Eamon Gilmore, EU Special Representative for Human Rights, stated this in an interview with Dom TV channel. He noted that Europe is seriously concerned about the violation of human rights in the territories temporarily uncontrolled by Kyiv. Thus, the total amount of money that the EU has allocated to Ukraine for humanitarian needs since the beginning of this year made €29 million.
Well, the international community, the United Nations, the OSCE, and indeed the European Union are supporting human rights in Ukraine as we are in every other country. As far as the European Union is concerned, we are ready to work with the government of Ukraine to ensure that the highest standards of human rights are achieved in the country. And the European Union is unwavering in its support for the territorial integrity and the sovereignty of Ukraine, and we will continue to work constructively with the government and the people of Ukraine and with civil society in Ukraine to that end.
Energy independence, energy efficiency and transition to alternative energy sources. It is possible to achieve all this in the nearest future. This was discussed at the International Energy Business Forum. My colleagues know how Ukraine is going to win the struggle for energy freedom.
Frequency relay of Ukrainian production. The small device is capable of disconnecting the whole region of Ukraine from electricity. If the network is greatly overloaded, then the engine spinning turbines are slowing down, and this is very bad. It can lead to the destruction of the turbines, and this relay is designed to exclude excessive consumption of energy by consumers. Unique devices of a kind are demonstrated at a specialized exhibition of equipment. They are said to help the country become energy independent, and in conditions when the Kremlin is trying to blackmail Europe to force it to speed up the certification of Nord Stream 2, a gas pipeline bypassing Ukraine, it is also a matter of national security. What is security? It consists of two parts: the security of our power system, which is our reliability and our balance. It is a matter for our generating and distributing companies. At this forum, we say that we need to unite all companies under the auspices of technical policy, industry, ministry, and first of all the system operator, the national energy company Ukrenergo. Ukraine is already working upon a plan to reduce carbon dioxide emissions into the atmosphere. How are we going to replace the coal-fired thermal generation? What new shunting capacities will appear in Ukraine? What would be the energy mix in some 10 or 15 years? We'll be able to say that in our country climate neutrality has come and we do not pollute the environment, and energy only works to ensure that every house has light and heat, and industrial enterprises and businesses work, and even when connected to the energy networks, it goes on quietly without any problems. Joining the Ukrainian power grid to the European one is not only energy independence, but also an opportunity to increase export opportunities, as well as the means to demonopolize the industry. On the one hand, we have a lot of work, on the other hand, we have a chance. If we complete it successfully, we will get a completely new level of readiness from our networks, from our power system. So I want today's technology to be industrial and approach us to our goal. Prime Minister of Ukraine Denis Shmyhal earlier said that Ukraine is planning to synchronize the united energy system of our country with the European power grid already in 2023. Reported by Volodymyr and Yulia Hronovska, UATV News.
The Parliament of Ukraine adopted the draft state budget for 2022 in the first reading. 264 MPs voted for this decision. They've also proposed more than 3,000 amendments to the draft of the Cabinet of Ministers. The Profile Committee took into account about half of them. Now the document will be handed over to the government so that the Ministry of Finance corrects the draft, taking into account the proposals of the MPs. The main priorities for public funding are medicine, defense, social sphere, infrastructure and digital transformation.
As for the expenses, it is possible to reduce them. I think that it is quite possible to reduce the costs for the direct rate of the President of Ukraine. It is quite possible to amend the spending for the Office of the Prosecutor General and the Security Service of Ukraine. The state proposes to invest $95 million in energy efficiency, which is a 1,000th part of the GDP, despite the fact that this is probably the first challenge that the state faces after the armed aggression of the Russian Federation. This budget is not the final version. We agreed that this is like a draft. We are voting it now, then later there will be many amendments in various areas. It is clear that each committee of the parliament says its word for defense, for education, for medicine and for all other areas, production, infrastructure and decentralization. And this is the right approach. Expenses are understandable. They are a priority for medicine. The doctors' salaries have to increase, and I think it's right.
Diesel fuel supplies from Russia for discounted prices. The State Bureau of Investigation will check information on the involvement of structures close to MP Viktor Medvedchuk. According to investigation, in October there were ships with 30 tons of fuel on board in Mykolaiv in southern Ukraine. The declared price in the documents turned out to be significantly lower than the market price. Criminal proceedings under the Articles of Abuse of Power or Official Position have been initiated. The price declared by the suppliers was almost half the market price. This allowed the dealers to minimize the payment of mandatory customs payments in the amount of millions of dollars. Also, according to the investigation, it was established that these vessels have entered the ports of the Russian Federation last year and the goods delivered are on Russian origin. Ukraine has updated data on the situation with coronavirus in the regions. According to the Ministry of Health of Ukraine, about 19,000 new cases were detected over the past day. There are 14 regions at the capital, Kyiv, in the orange zone. 5 regions remain in the red zone. Meanwhile, a record number of people were immunized against COVID-19 the day before. According to the Ministry of Health, 226,500 people were vaccinated. More than 6 million Ukrainians underwent a full course of immunization. Another 8 million received at least one dose. It is more contagious and more dangerous than the Delta. A mutation of the Indian coronavirus strain was discovered in the UK. It has already been named Delta Plus, Financial Times newspaper informs. At the moment, the Delta strain is dominant in Britain, but according to the latest data, 6% of all cases of coronavirus refer to a new mutation. Ukrainian epidemiologists are also confident that the coronavirus mutates like the viruses of the common cold. At the same time, it becomes less aggressive but more contagious. While new strains are emerging, which are pretty contagious, we still have such a difficult situation. Besides, a lot of citizens have not been vaccinated. This all creates additional risks and worsens the situation. But in general, elimination of the virus must take place in the society, and we cannot be under such tension forever. Anyway, somehow it will happen. But how quickly? We do not understand yet. That's true. A ticket is not enough. New rules for travel between regions will come into force on October 21st. Due to strengthening of quarantine, a vaccination certificate, a negative PCR test or a rapid antigen test will be required. The travel rules will not change for passengers under 18. The driver or conductor are going to check the documents at the entrance. In case the certificate or test are absent, the driver has the right to ban the passenger from travel. Energy independence through smart management of housing and utilities. Experts discussed how digital technologies and modernization of housing and communal services can improve the quality of life of Ukrainians and reduce the utilities cost. Which solutions and technologies were proposed during the International Congress dedicated to housing and utilities reforming in Ukraine? My colleagues will tell.
Replacement of pipe networks, roads construction, waste sorting and recycling. Ukrainians would like to change a lot in public utilities sphere. First of all, the roads and the general attitude to utilities, sewerage system and water supply, for example, are in awful condition. In the first place, there are problems with parking, cleanness and eco-service. Almost half of all engineering networks in Ukraine are in a deplorable condition. They need to be either overhauled or replaced with new ones. Significant reduction in prices for utilities could become the main advantage of modernization.
Pumping and electrical equipment replacement as well as energy consumption reduction are the priorities. Secondly, we have access losses, such as water losses in the networks. We have to direct all investment programs to reduce these losses. During the next 3 years, tough energy-saving measures at water supply and sewerage companies should be introduced.
Before the heating season starts, local authorities are looking for the opportunity to save on payment for the social sphere. Kindergartens, schools, hospitals. The introduction of digital technologies in the field of housing and utilities will help resolve this issue. This also applies to automatic monitoring of the consumption, primarily at budgetary institutions as well as at multi-story housing. These are various digital solutions in terms of energy efficiency. For example, for smart lighting, they allow to save up to 30 or 40% of energy due to smart regulation of street lighting as well. The Ministry for Communities and Territories Development of Ukraine promises to help the regions with payments for heating.
As for local self-government bodies, next year budget the personal income tax will be increased by 4%. As for the national amount, this will approximately make at least 11 billion hryvnias. Starting from this year, an additional subvention will be introduced. The subvention will be provided to low-income tax-paying communities.
Implementation of up-to-date technologies for housing and utilities management and its modernization are set to provide energy independence for Ukraine in some 3 years. Reported by Vadim Kramer and Valery Bakos, UATV News.
That's all for this hour. More updates on our official website, YouTube, Twitter and Facebook pages. Thank you for staying with the UATV channel. See you tomorrow. Goodbye.